What was growing up like for you? Did you intuitively always know some of these things, or like how did this all begin from the very beginning?
Great question. I grew up in Ridgewood, New Jersey. All I knew from the time I was 7 was that I was going to be a writer. And I always knew that or a waitress, because I could see that they had a lot of money left on the table after they ate. So I thought, well, that might be a good job. But I actually always wanted to be a writer. I knew I wanted to be a reporter, a journalist. And the whole idea of being an investigative reporter really appealed to me. I wanted to put bad guys in jail because there's a big campaigning activist side of me as well. And I had always been interested in esoterica. I'd always been interested in things like astrology and just ideas, new ideas. I was interested in transcendental meditation way back when it first was introduced to America. And so a lot of those ideas were great interest to me. But once I started being an investigative reporter, and my first big story when I was 23 was busting a baby selling ring by going undercover and pretending to be an unwed mother. I had hidden tape recorders, that whole thing. And I ended up writing a book about that and breaking a whole bunch of other baby selling rings. So, as I say, I was going to put bad guys in jail. And I came over to the UK to research a book and never left. And that's where I reside now. And excuse me. And I decided with my husband, who's also a journalist, to set up a newsletter called What Doctors Don't Tell You, because we were very interested in what was dangerous and unproven in medicine. That became a source of investigation for both of us. In the course of doing that work, I came across some really good studies of spiritual healing. And I kept thinking to myself, wait a minute. These are scientifically published studies, and they're saying that essentially you can take a thought, send it to somebody else, and that will heal them. And that in itself undermines everything we think about how the world works. So that is what got me into pursuing this for the field. Now, I didn't know what I was going to find. A journalist never does. So I suppose that was a quality that was very useful for going down this rabbit hole, because that is the daily life of a journo. You don't know what you're going to find. You pull at a piece of string just to see where it's going to lead, and you keep pulling and pulling. And in the case of the field, I thought I was going to find something very simple about human energy fields by talking to frontier um, biologists and physicists, etc. But I found a whole science in the making, and the really the discoveries of these individuals that compounded into a completely new view of the world. I did not expect that. But once again, once I did that, the rabbit hole beckoned. The string got longer. I had to keep pulling and say, okay, so if thoughts are things that affect other things, how far can we take this? We able to cure cancer with our thoughts, and that became the intention experiment. Then, well, what happens if I shrink this down to small groups? Does it have the same effect as the big ones? Does size matter? And that became the power of eight, and so forth. And then how to live this. How do we live according to the new science? And that became Living the Field, and also my book, The Bond. And so I keep pulling at strings, and my new book will be pulling at another string too. So you continue to go down that, and that's the kind of work I'm very much used to. It's the kind of the way I write too. I go into a deep dive into whatever I write about. So the courses and the experiments are just another side of that.
So what you're telling me is when you started off in kind of journalism and going undercover, I can imagine that if you can bust a baby selling ring or a couple of them, that it would mentally prepare you for some of the obstacles maybe when you start pulling on that string and some of the criticism and some of the different rabbit holes that you inevitably went down. It probably prepared you to be resilient and maybe, dare I say, a little bit stubborn in the regard of, I'm not going to turn a blind eye to something that I see that's wrong, that I know to be the truth happening here. Am I right when I hear that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of my mentors when I was in my 20s said to me something that's always stuck with me. He said, "They haven't said no to you until they kick you down the stairs." And I loved that because it really said it. And that is the mark of a good journalist, is somebody who doesn't say take no for an answer, and somebody who keeps investigating and keeps looking. And that held us in good stead during COVID because we continued to report through the whole 3 years of what the government wasn't telling you. We were sticking with the science. We weren't talking of conspiracies and speculation. We were sticking what was there, what was told to us by many doctors and scientists who had discovered things that were dangerous and unproven. And so we kept reporting on it, even when some people attacked us for that. Most didn't. We stayed really with the science, pretty hard to argue with it. But, as I said, with medicine, it often is a religion. So I am completely fine in that space. And we've seen off numerous skeptics trying to shut down our magazine. I thought, okay, uh, they're attacking us. They even placed a story about us in one of the London major papers. And I realized I'm not going to get very far by suing Rupert Murdoch. But what I can do is essentially take apart this story on journalistic grounds. So after the story was published, and we didn't recognize ourselves in us, they never called us for comment or anything. We just started Facebooking it and putting it on our social media, saying, "You call that a story?" And this was to the science editor. This is what you did wrong as a journalist. Shame on you. You never interviewed us. You didn't do this. You didn't check that. You didn't do the. And the guy freaked out and he started coming on our Facebook page, at which point all of our followers were starting to attack him for that. So, and we ultimately found one of the skeptics who was trying to shut down our magazine was taking money from Coca-Cola, to say essentially that sugar wasn't dangerous for you. So again, we fought back. We created a little meme with him coming out of a Coke can with a fist full of dollars and put it up on our Facebook pages and realized, you have to stand up for what you believe in. If you don't stand up, you'll fall for anything, as the saying goes. So I think that's a very important thing to have that side.
What's going on, guys? If you like that clip right there, you will love the full interview. You can check that out right there. I'll see you on the next video. Oh, and subscribe because we got a lot of big things coming up in the near future.